Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Covered His Face Off Excel, where we are past the halfway point of the year of 1993, as we look at the magazines of July. And joining us at the start of summer is Amiga Format, Amiga Power, See You Amiga, The One for Amiga, and Amiga Action. Fight! Let's start with The One for Amiga, who provided 2 discs with 3 demos as well as some PD. And we're starting off with a bang as it's cannon fodder. When we've seen this previously, it was more of a dev diary, as we got to see the development of a single level, as it got better and better when they added more stuff to it. Now we get 3 complete ones that range from the very first level of the game all the way up to some of the more difficult later ones, where you'll have to kill all the baddies as well as blow up their buildings. Not that we get any mission info screens to tell us this. We also don't get a map, which surprises me. Now the difficulty does ramp up extremely quickly, as you'll have to deal with grenaders and missile launchers quite soon on, as we play across 2 of the main graphical styles. It's interesting to see that the graphics for the poppies got changed up, considering they were quite a controversial inclusion. I'm surprised they just weren't removed entirely. But what we are seeing here is a pretty much complete game, and it's one that I have a lot of fun playing, and this demo would have gotten me very interested in the final title. Global Gladiators is the next demo, which is a weirdly McDonald's branded game. And it is a bit of an odd platformer as well, as you have this Super Soaker style water gun that fire these weird blobs that fly in their own odd arcs. And it has a much larger kickback than I've seen of some shotguns in games. And you will need to use these to take out the phlegmy monsters that inhabit this world. Now at first I thought you needed to find and destroy these machines, but it turns out all you have to do is run to the right to catch up with the Clown Prince of Greece. All while the soundtrack that has no right to be as good as it is plays in the background. I did find this demo to be a little bit buggy, as I was able to walk in air in a few places, and I don't mean on top of the hidden paths. These were areas that I wasn't meant to be walking on. But apart from that, this is a fast, fluid game, even if it is just a single level demo. That appears to be the first map from the final title. F1 Challenge is racing, and now the game that would be renamed to the legally distinct F17 Challenge. No prizes for guessing this was a Team 17 game. The car looks quite nice and detailed, and the track moves quickly enough, with all the curves and hills that you'd want out of a racing game. Now this is just a single track, and just 2 laps at that. So the big challenge here is trying to get first, which is made harder by the fact that the other cars only have to tap you and you'll be stopped and damaged, while they'll just continue on like nothing happened. Which makes overtaking them so much harder, as they will just weave around all over the track to try and stop you. It's a fine enough racing game, but it can be quite annoying as well. And their single PD game is for Baldi, a game where you have to move around the blocks using the yellow ones to teleport up and down, all to try and collect the floppy disks, which you'll have to do while avoiding the darts that are flying around. It's a title that we've seen before, and in that intervening time it hasn't been updated, so that means we still get the overly sensitive teleport issue, as holding down the fire button for just a millisecond too long will result in you teleporting back to where you were, and then back down again, and then back up again, and then back down. It's really annoying. And more often than not, this will send you right into the path of a dart. Now once you get the hang of it, it's not a bad game. I do like how the graphics change for each level, but the controls, they are always a bit of an annoyance. See You Amiga is what you'll see now, and across its 2 discs there were 2 demos, an application as well as some utilities. Now let's start off with the software, which is Workbench Management System. Now it's mostly a menu that lives on the side of the screen, that gives you quick access to a number of included tools, like its own text editor. That seems fine enough. You have a phone book. That requires you to select an already existing entry before you can add anything new. We have a calendar, where you can put reminders about your meetings. There's the DEU, which has nothing to do with extended universes, instead it's a help guide for various Amiga error codes, CLI commands, as well as being able to look up ASCII code conversions. We have Squeezebox, which actually looks far more interesting, as it allows you to compress and decompress files. Now this was a little bit more manual than I was expecting. I thought we would get a file dialog at least, and possibly all the options for the tools all neatly laid out. But instead you have to type them in. And is it me, or are they using the Star Trek motion picture font for all of this? They also included their own file browser, that I found so much slower than Workbench's, and it didn't really seem worth it. But if you did like this menu, then you can actually add your own buttons, like say this key map editor, which was the next utility that See You Amiga included. That lets you edit your keyboard map, so the keys can do different things based on shift and other inputs. By all reports, it's much better than the one that was provided on the Workbench discs, but I can't say I've ever really used it, so I have no real opinion. There is also Boot Logo, a program that effectively just shows a full screen image, which is designed to be used with any program's startup sequence, or even your entire Workbench setup. So when it loads, it will show you this image rather than a blank screen, and it will then close automatically as soon as it detects a new window has been shown. There is also a virus checker that can run in the background to check disks as they're inserted, or check your RAM. It also has a few dedicated checks built into it as well. Now there was another program that was designed to read serial port inputs and then try and draw a line on the screen, bit like an oscilloscope, but without anything to put into the serial port, it'll just draw a line along the bottom, and it wasn't all that interesting to see. Their first demo is for F-17 Challenge again, but this time we do have a different looking car as well as a different track. This time we're at Monaco, where previously it was at Britain. And it's very much the same as before, just 2 laps, which is hardly enough time to even need to use the pits. So when they talk about the fancy pit graphics, you're not really going to see it unless you purposely stop. Their final demo is for The Patrician, which unfortunately is not about the ruler of Ankh-Morpork. Instead, it's a very complex game that I'm barely wrapping my head around even after a few attempts at playing. But this does look like something that I would really enjoy playing. Now it's a very attractive game, even if it is a little bit confusing, as you have to head to the different areas of town depending on where you click, and it's not particularly obvious where you're clicking to where you're going. At least not to me. Now what you will want to try and do is make money by moving cargo around with your ships, which to me sounds like an olden Frontier Elite. But then I'm a sci-fi geek at heart, and that's the type of game that I really enjoy. Before it will allow you to send your ship out, you will need a crew, which means heading down to the tavern to get some. You'll also need to buy some cargo, as it's useless to send out a ship that is empty. And you'll also most likely need to borrow some money from the bank, as all of this is very expensive. But get all that done, then you can select your destination and set sail. Now this is a game that I would have to put far more time into to fully learn it, and really work out exactly what it is you're meant to be doing here. But as a demo, it's extremely interesting, even if I have no idea of what its limits actually are. Amiga Power is what we're putting into the floppy drive now, and with its single disc it had 3 PD titles as well as a single demo. And we start with PD and we've got Premier Picks, a football game but with a twist, as instead of directly controlling the game, you pick cards, which you'll take turns with against the computer.
Oh, that was a tremendous effort.
Now these might let you score a goal, or give you another turn, or just switch out that card for another one, but eventually you will find the one that will end the half, or the game itself. It's a simple concept that has been done very well, with a higher level of presentation than we typically see of PD games of this time. There's lots of samples, and even some digitized images. But with it being a football game, well, I somehow still managed to lose. Tangle. A very basic but filled menu hides what seems to be a light cycle game, but one that by default has relative controls, as in you only use left or right to change your direction, not the standard up, down, left, right. Now this isn't the easiest game to show as it's multiplayer only, and I think the randomized starting locations is an interesting idea, but I have no idea which direction you are going in when you start. I know that this would be a lot more fun multiplayer, but I'm not sure this is actually the most fair version of light cycles you've ever seen, particularly with that starting system. But it is one of the more basic looking versions. Oh, and don't put the max speed all the way up. You won't even have time to blink, let alone know where you're going, before you've ended up ramming into the wall and it's game over already. Space War. This is another multiplayer only game, where each player controls their own ship and basically have to avoid crashing into the sun, and all the other things flying around, all of which have their own gravity and you'll have to fight against it. You'll also want to try and shoot the other player, although it might just be better to try and avoid them. Now there's lots of options, including playing online, or at least via a serial cable, as well as setting up how much gravity there is, how much power you have, and all that type of fun stuff. This is another one that would be enjoyable with mates. This actually reminds me a little bit of Gravity Wars, which is very much like this with the gravity, but instead you have to set angles, and you're also playing with the Starship Enterprise. Their demo is for Yo-Yo, an interesting platformer brawler hybrid, as you have to move around this house fighting rats, bats and other people, with your fists to start with, but you will pick up weapons like nunchucks, throwing stars, and even a chainsaw. Now this is a semi-custom level based on the first map of the game, but it's been massively cut down, and a whole load of it has been changed as well. But you can see bits of the final game's layout here and there. Now it won't take particularly long to finish, but it is a lot of fun to play. Now this was actually one of the last games that I bought for the Amiga, but I never really got a chance to play it as my discs were damaged, and it seems the office that I posted them to, well, it had closed down by the time I had gotten the game, so I never got any replacements. Which is a shame, as this is a fun game, with not only lots of things going on in the level, but also on that HUD at the bottom as well. Amiga Format is coming up now, with its 2 discs and 1 demo. but it also has a bunch of utilities and application demos as well. So let's start with ProTracker, a mod tracking program. Now, as we know, I have very little musical aptitude, which seems to extend even to using music programs, as it took way longer than it should have done for me to find out even how to load something up. Which I did eventually, as they provided a mod that you can use to show it off with. Now you can do the normal things of changing the samples used, editing them, or even changing the BPM, so you can make it sound a lot faster. But really, the bulk of this editor is the 4-track window that you can use to edit your song. Now if you wanted to play this outside of the program, well, they included NPlay, the ProTracker module music player, which was very nice of them. Also on the disc are some animation cycles. Now these can be used with either the previous month's animation package or even something like Deluxe Paint. And in a similar vein to ProTracker, they also included an anim player on the disc. The final program is for a demo of Adorage. Now this is something we've seen before, but it was the full version. So it's funny to see a demo for a program that later on the magazine would be giving away for free. This is a program to make various video effects that you might then use in your own movies. It has a number of effects built into it. And even after messing around with it for a bit, across the various versions, I've never quite worked out what it is that you really want to be using it for. And I'm still not quite seeing it now. I'm also not seeing how this is a demo, as all the effects I selected seem to work, and I don't really see why you'd even save some of this stuff, so there's probably something that I'm really missing with this program. And finally, the demo is for Syndicate, an absolute classic, that appears to give you various options when you start it up, but it turns out these are mostly static screens. And once you get past those, we get what I think is a custom mission for the demo. Now it is a standard assassination one, but if you read the text, it's talking about taking out an ex-Amiga Format employee. That is some harsh retirement plan they have in the future. Now I do think the map layout is new, and we only have 2 people to do it with. So you can just go in guns blazing and just try and fight your way out, or you can try and be sneaky and avoid everyone. Now that never really works for me, particularly in this one where it doesn't seem to have a Persuadertron. I'm not sure if that chip looking thing in the inventory was meant to be it, but it didn't seem to do anything when I tried it out. So instead, loaded up the miniguns and just went for it. Now this is an absolutely great game with its 3D isometric world, where you can go above and below certain paths. And while this isn't the longest demo you'll ever play, you can just keep coming back to it to just blow everything up. And finally, we have Amiga Action. Again with 2 discs, but we have 3 demos and 5 PD titles. So let's start off with the PD with Battle Cars 3D. A fun game where you drive around this 3D world trying to shoot at the other car. Now you can do this against varying different levels of AI, or against a mate. Now it moves nice and smoothly, and the handling is surprisingly good for a PD title. Now it could do with a few more layouts to make it more interesting, and it would be more fun if the computer tried to shoot back at you rather than just constantly running away, but it is a decent PD title. Trek Trivia, a quiz game where you have to answer questions about the original Star Trek, and not easy questions as well. Some of these require some deep lore. Now, keeping up the deep lore territory, this was actually developed by George Brossard, of Duke Nukem fame, and this was one of his earliest titles. Graphically, it's simple but works, but I do think they could have toned down a few bits as the text is a little difficult to read at times behind that fancy background. Mutants from Mars. A very basic looking title screen hides what is actually a very interesting game. It's similar to the Doctor Who title that we've seen before, in that we have to move around Mars where these monsters will try and eat you. But it seems that you can get them to eat each other instead. So our goal is to try and make them walk into the same square as each other. Now this isn't the easiest task, as they will try and track you down. And the only thing that will help us is the teleporter that will randomly move us around the level. Now when you manage to take out all the mutants, you'll then go on to the next map. Now there are craters and other things dotted around the map that will help you avoid getting chomped. And you can use the minimap in the side to aid you in seeing where they, as well as the craters, are. All in all, this is a nice little PD game, with some pretty good artwork, even if it is static. The only downside is that you had to play it with the number pad, so A600 users, you might have been left behind here. Amiga Worm, a snake variant for the Amiga, that uses the relative control method again that just messes with my head. I would much rather have absolute controls, but there doesn't seem to be an option for that. But it does look nice enough as we move around collecting the hearts to grow. But it is a simple game, even if it is done mostly decently. It really is those controls that let it down for me. And finally, there's Pharaoh's Curse. A game that looks more like a BBC Micro title than something that we should be getting on the Amiga. Although this is really a port of an Atari 8-bit game, so they really decided this is what they wanted it to look like. Now you need to go around collecting the treasures on each of the screens, but that is much easier said than done, as just entering some screens can be an instant death. But you can get picked up by the bird and then randomly dropped on another screen, which is very handy. Now along the way, the pharaohs and the mummies will attack you by either walking into you or straight up shooting you. So you better be quick and firing at them first. It's an interesting game with its own unique twists, but the random difficulty level really holds it back for me. Now let's move on to the game demos, and first up is Gunship 2000, a 3D helicopter sim, that once you've managed to work out how to take off, is a very smooth to play, at least on an A1200 game. Now after looking at the controls in the magazine, it's not too difficult to fly about. And slowly you will find the targets that you need to take on, which is mostly easy with the guided missiles. Now it is a bit of a shame as there's no audio, as it feels a bit lifeless without it. But it is fun to fly around and try and track down those primary and secondary targets, and then just let loose with some Hellfire missiles or just go in with the cannons. But being a modern, at the time, flight sim, you can let loose with some of those armaments from a great distance, and then just see a tiny speck of an explosion in the distance. Match of the Day, a football management title based on a TV show. Now this plays a little bit differently to most of the other football management games that you might have seen, as you have to drag events into the diary, so you can only do one thing a day, then progress to the next day. Now most of these have been disabled for the demo, but eventually you will make it to a match and, well, all you'll get is the final scores. You don't get to watch anything at all. I think the highlights icon that has been disabled in the demo is meant to help you, but at the moment all we get is a very simple management game. That isn't a lot of fun to play, to be honest. And that isn't just me saying that due to somehow also managing to lose badly in each of my games. And finally we have Bully's Darts. This is the second sports game that's based on a TV show, and this time it's Bullseye. but it doesn't feel like they had the full rights to that show. As it has the most random collection of royalty-free music playing in the background. Now the only option we have here is football. The rest tells you not in the demo, and then we'll reload the menu. Now this is some weird mix between football and darts, where each side gets a chance to throw at the board and need to land on the highlighted number. Do that and you'll move forwards towards your goal, with doubles and triples moving you quicker. But you have to control the randomly moving hand and try and hit the dartboard in this 2-player game. The downside to this, well, it's not really a lot of fun. The upside? Well, Bully's face at the end of the game? This really wasn't the title for me. And with that slightly disappointing end of the magazines, it's time to look back at what I thought were the top 3 bits of software. In third place, I'm going to say The Patrician, as I think this is a complex game that was barely working out after a few goes, but I wanted to put more time into it and really learn how to play it. Second is Yo-Jo. It's a fun platformer that might have been a slightly too short, but I did have a lot of fun with it. And in first place, I'm going with Cannon Fodder. I couldn't decide between this or Syndicate, but for some reason Cannon Fodder is always stuck around with me and it's the game I always go back to. So what did you think? As always, let me know your thoughts on the magazines and my picks down in the comments. And I hope to see you next time. And until then, I've been the Goldfish. That was more PD than I was expecting in 1993, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thanks for watching. I hope that if you got this far, you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, then YouTube has provided some buttons that you can use to let me know. And if you'd like to check out more content from me, then there should be links on the screen right now.